This is just some PVC. So I have my doubts if it can handle 4,000 PSI. So make sure you don't have your guy down there with your full pressure on and squeeze that trigger, because you may end up blowing off the caps. I don't know. I'm going to test with it. I'm going to take it back, connect it with some water, see what PSI this thing's really rated at. Don't worry, Brian. It'll be on a Saturday when nobody's at the office.
Just get it on there. I don't want it.
So it's a pretty nifty contraption. It uses the same head. It's basically a 14-inch head that basic Titan roller. In fact, we're going to unscrew this, put it on a pole, and use it over on the silicone to back roll with. So wherever Nick is. Yep, there you go. It's back there on the back side. Ready for you. All right, the other contraption, this is the 4-inch Titan roller that they came out with mainly for seams, because most seam applications are 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches. The benefit of using one of these versus basic 3/8 nap roller, 3-inch nap roller, is the U-shape on it. It prevents the roller from working its way loose. If you've ever used one of those basic 3/8 paint rollers, you'll always find that you go use it, and then you have to tap the roller back on, or you have to go in the direction of the arm. These you don't have to. So, and they're actually a little bit higher quality than those basic 3/8 rollers. But 3/8 rollers has their purpose. They're cheap and durable. If you have something that you go out to lunch and you're sitting up there for an hour and you come back and it's got crusties all over it, you can throw it away and use another one. Same thing with those though. You can change out your rollers. One-time use. So, all right, that's the Titan roller. We're going to actually demo that here in a minute. The first thing we're going to address here is drain penetration with the 522. In this little section here, we're basically going to demo the treatment of the drain. We removed the ring on it, and when we go to apply the 522, we're going to work it around and down into the drain until it meets the PVC and slightly past it. And that's how you're going to basically treat one of these details. Where's my hands? I was told I was going to have some hands. I'm too old. I want to get on my knees for one person nowadays, and that's my wife. Sorry, we're not on camera, are we? Hope you're watching, babe. Love you. Yeah. All right. So anytime.
Today is not for hire. Don't anybody think about it. So.
Oh man.
All right. All right. So there are different ways to address the drain. Miss Lisa, she actually prefers to do a 3-coursing. I know y'all probably walked by the other drain there where we have all the 522 already treated and everything, and they haven't treated that drain. It's because they're going to 3-course that one. They prefer to use fabric around their penetrations as well, which is also an option in lieu of the 522. But if you're not experienced with fabric, anytime you're doing details, it's very tedious, and you have to be precise with it because you don't want wrinkles in it. It's got to be flat on the surface. It has to be fully embedded. You don't want no air pockets or anything underneath that fabric because you're just asking for trouble later on down the years. Especially if you're on a metal roof. You're going to get water in there, it's going to be a rust spot, and it's going to spread from there. Right now, basically what he's doing is we have a lot of granules getting stirred up off the mod bit, so he's just brushing all the granules out of the drain to ensure that the surface that he's going to be applying this coating isn't really corrupted with too much dirt and debris in there. Now when he does this, he's going to work it down in and out, and when he works it out, he's mainly going to be about 3 inches out. We call for 6-inch width applications on most of our details, and that really entails 3 inches out, 3 inches up, or in, down, around, whatever the penetration is. Now was going to have a wet mill gauge to ensure that he's applying it thick enough, but I can tell you right now, it's...
That product's pretty good. We had to add xylene to it, so to get it where you can...
Look at there, saving the day. Hey. Most of our detail, all the penetrations and everything like that with our Ure-A-SIl system and the 522, you're looking to do a 90 wet mill application rate. With wet mill gauges, you're at 80 max. So as long as you're registering 80 or above, we're looking for a 60 DFT. And I think in some cases we lowered it to 55 DFT. If that's the case, I mean, 80 wet mills is sufficient. But most of the time you can look at your detail and tell if you're putting it on at the right application rate. If it's too thin, you'll still see pretty much all the details in the detail that you're treating. But once he wraps it up, I'll go ahead and dab the wet mill gauge in there just to verify. I have a feeling it's probably going to be more than what this will pick up. But you always want to go back and kind of check your details, especially if you got a QC guy on the job, a new guy on the job. When it comes to the 522 application rate, please keep in mind though that if you are new to coatings or you got a new crew that is working with coatings, your waste factor may be higher in those cases versus a real experienced crew. So if you do a job, or say by chance you do ask us for a material estimate, my estimates are based purely off of math, and there's a lot of variables in play. If you're heavy a little bit than at others, it's just not. Nobody's as perfect at installing as a math problem configured, so to speak. I mean, not to criticize anybody's work or anything, but
Time of year makes a big difference. You use
Yeah.
product when it's cool.
yes, it is. Lisa just brought up that time of year is also a big issue as well. With these products, especially the urethanes and silicones, when it's cold outside, they start getting thicker, which is going to increase your waste factor, and sometimes maybe take longer just to install the job. You can install these solvent-based products at low temperatures. We do recommend above freezing when you start your install. It isn't really based on the product. It's more or less fear of hidden frost or any other moisture that could be lingering on that roof. But if you are installing in lower temperatures, anything below 50 degrees, you may want to use pail warmers, drum warmers, store it in a climate-controlled facility overnight, which in most cases is not the situation. You're loading it onto the roof, it's staying up there. If you can put it all over in one batch, I know one contractor mentioned to me he takes a heating blanket and just puts it over his material and leaves it plugged in overnight, which helps keep the material warm enough so when he does do the pail warmers, no, you don't have to. We're going to basically do the seams. Because on this detail, what they normally do on these details, you would start working your way out on the seams, but what Lisa likes to do, especially with this Ure-A, is they'll like to cut back the mod bit. And the reason we're not going to address it now is mainly out of time concerns. We honestly thought it was going to be a lot colder and people were going to be more anxious to get off this roof. But that good to go. Now, as he treated this, he didn't go into the bolt holes, of course, because you got to screw back in the ring. And what they also like to do is install that while the coating's still wet, so it sits in there and creates a perfect seal. If in the event that you have one of these drains and you are unable to get the bolts undone because they're just rusted beyond belief, you can go up and over the ring with the 522. Cover it all up, go down into the drain, because the next time you go up there to do a repair, you're going to have to yank that sucker out anyway, and it's probably going to be a re-roof situation at that point. But if you do that, make sure when you remove the little cage over it, that when you install it, you have two options at that point. You can put that little grate back over the top of it while it's still wet, so you can still get your seal here, or make sure you take something and make sure your edge right here is still clean. So when you go to put that grate back over it, then it still matches up, it lines up. You can actually put it back on. That looks mighty fine there, sir. Alrighty. What's that? Alright. And just for, I gotta watch my language, I'm on camera, for giggles. This is 65 mils, but he's outside of the detail because you always want to feather these out. When you get into the inside here, he is way above 80. So that's excellent.
Good job, man.
Alrighty.
He is not for hire. Not for hire.
Alright. So we do have another penetration over here that we'll move over to. This is just basically a small little vent. You know, 9 times out of 10, when you do your 520 application and you're going up a vertical like this, your 520 is going to puddle back down at the base. It's going to sag and go back down. But when you're faced with any details like this, the main focus point is really just going to be here along the edge where the substrate, there's a crease in the substrate and the penetration. And that's all he's addressing now. If you do end up a little light in this application, you don't have to worry too much because when you do your 520, it's going to come down and pull, and your 410 is going to come down and pull around it as well. So at the end of the day or at the end of the job, you will have plenty of mils around the base of that. But back now that he's kind of moved out of the way, the reason we're not going to do this right now and the reason they cut it back is because the mod bit's loose. So when they cut this back, they're going to go up until the point where they got adhesion to the base sheet below and cut away all the loose, and then they're going to go in there and coat it. For time reasons, I didn't know how long exactly they would take for them to whip out a knife, start cutting it back, and actually treating that. And plus, most of you guys are roofers, you're well aware on how to use a razor knife and all that good stuff. Alright, I'm watching my step so I don't step in any good stuff. Right now he's just using the brush to go ahead and hit up the seams there. What they do, what Thomas's crew does most of the time, they'll roll their seams. I haven't seen any of you guys using these though, but
Little orange brushes. I have these rollers.
yeah. They do use 3/8 snap rollers. They whipped one up here when we thought we were going to use a gallon container. Which is completely fine. However you put the product down is however you put the product down. This is just one of those tools and devices that'll alleviate some of those annoyances of having to deal with those 3/8 rollers rolling off or your actual roller just falling apart, getting gunked up, no longer working.
It's also called a paradigm. They're so used to the other rollers that when you give them the, I bought those, but they don't use them.
Can't blame him. I mean,
Nobody likes anything until they use it, then they love it.
it's because it's so pretty. Alright. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and use that. This next portion, we're basically going to treat a seam. And at that point, we will be open for if you want to attempt or try to use one of these rollers to get a feel for what the difference is between this roller and what you currently do to apply the brush grade on all these seams. By all means, you're more than welcome to give it a shot. This stuff looks mighty thick. So.
Yeah. I think you're trying to say a 522. What do you want me at?
It doesn't matter. You start tying in on any of these seams. As you can see, the 522 is really thick. We didn't really warm this stuff up today. This was kind of a last minute. It's also a little old. Once you crack open a pail of 522 and you use some, it is going to start curing. Just go how you normally would, man. Just go right on down the seam there. And
Anybody want to do it? Come
Yep. Normally when you're working with the 522, it is a little bit thinner, so it'd roll a lot better for you. Stuff isn't being very generous for us right now. But if any of you guys want to volunteer, any takers, anybody want to do some work when they're not at work?
We also fix that can about 30 minutes, okay?
Yeah, it's... All right, we got a taker. Welcome, Miss Marquita, one of our account executives, strategic accounts. It's that role. New coding installer. I was just informed she's not for hire either. It's just so easy. Anybody new to roofing can come up. Yeah, you don't want to ruin those Jordans. Alright, so if your seam looks like this as you're detailing it, you're a little thin, you're going to have a lot of material left over. When you're treating your seams, you're really looking for their finished product kind of right here. One good indicator if you have enough material on the seam is if you can see the seam, literally at the crevices here, because that's where the actual seam is where you want the majority of your material at. With how thick this material is, the dilemma would be is you would always have to go back and forth into the pail, and as you can see, you're going to get a lot of inconsistencies with how thick it is, and that is going to be real heavy for your application rate right there. So,
For those who've never used your thing, you're going to want to wear the worst clothes you have and make sure you got really good clothes on.
It's cold.
yes. Tim brought up a good point. Anytime you open up a pail of coating, you're getting coating on you. Yeah, that's. I mean, I did my demo and I got coating on my urethane. All my clothes. My bad. Coating on my clothes. All right. So. Last night at Wenzel's, by the way, join us. Ribs, chicken for you lane lovers. Yes. All right. So if we don't have any more takers, we're going to move on over to the next section, where we're going to go over the single wide spreader and the spreading equipment and the Titan roller for back rolling. All right. So,
Which way you want me? Open that one up.
I just want to make sure they were talking. I didn't want to interrupt. All right, guys. So this is a spreader. So 14 inch. There's three types of spreaders. There's a 14, a 27, and a 48. 40. Okay. See, this is my shot. I know.
Right back here somewhere, I think.
So
Right there.
the super spreader, the spreader, and then the mini spreader. Obviously, they come with these different little carpet things on here. Don't try to make them yourself and be cheap like me. It doesn't work. Okay? So, they come with this one. They have a premium roller. Anything up to about a gallon and a half per square, you could use this basic carpet roller. Then the next step up is a premium roller that they actually, I call them the little bunny fluffies that are on the side. They're the premium roller. They actually have this material right on the edge. Gives it a little bit more. They say you can get to about 2 gallons a square coverage on one pass. They just released, and I saw an email and a video by the owner of Rooftop Equipment, where they have another one that's like Premium Plus and novel. And then, so it's actually got like a hard band, and they got different level bands that'll get you up to like 2.5, almost 3 gallons per pass. And you can do that with silicone. The silicone you can put on just about as thick as you want. It doesn't really gas off to where it cures correctly throughout. Urethane you cannot put on super thick. One of the things you'll realize if you do this, and you put on, like these guys did a great job with the thickness here, but I've done it where I've put it on too thick, and then you literally start getting bubbles. And it's literally gassing, and it's just too much for it. You literally have these weird looking like leprosy blisters in your coating, and it looks weird. And you go pop it, and it looks like a sponge inside, and you're like, what's going on? And you put it on too thick, so don't put it on too thick, okay? The profile rollers, we talked about that very briefly downstairs. If you need to do something along the lines on a like an R panel, trapezoidal, all these different types of panels, you have a custom weird panel, you can actually get them to make you whatever you need custom. They come in the standard R and all that kind of stuff, and then they usually come in this particular 14-inch setup. But the difference is not just the profile roller, but the way that the holes are spread out. And the holes here on the basic spreaders are 1/4-inch wide holes, 1 inch is on center. Okay. Now, when you have a profile, obviously you have the rib height and then the rib, and it comes back down. So you got to have more product in that area because you have more surface area. So what they do is they put them about 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, apart right there at the rib, and then go back to 1/4 inch on the outside part on the flat portion of the flute on that panel. So you get more product on that area to make sure you get your proper coverage right on the rib. One of the other things that we talked about with one of the gentlemen here is when you're doing these seams, one of the things we did in Tulsa, we did a apartment complex that was modbit, and we did some testing with Rooftop Equipment, and they have another a spreader. It's called the mini bead. It's exactly like this. The only difference is it doesn't have this arm. It doesn't have this part. It's usually used for adhesives, right? So when they're putting down certain types of adhesives. So what we were able to do is you can buy these without holes and do what you want to do with them. And so what we did is we bought one. Actually, they sent me one, and didn't have this. It was the mini bead without the roller frame part, and there was no holes. And so what we're trying to accomplish is, you saw how slow it can be, with a chip brush or trying to dip and roll. Scott came up with an idea. It's going over it twice. You could potentially do 520 and a 30 mil, and come back and do another line of 30 mil potentially. But you're going faster, but twice of the work. So the other thing is, what we did is we actually ended up testing out and did an oval. Okay, we took the 522, we mixed it up. We actually splashed a little xylene. Xylene, that's what you got to use. That's what this stuff is comprised of. And a couple splashes of that in the 5 gallon, mix it up, and thins it down just enough to where it's not so thick it won't come out the hole, right? Just brush grade. And so what we did is we did an oval. I don't remember the dimensions. I'll have to get back to you. I have it written down somewhere. And then it allowed us the oval creates a ribbon. Okay? And so we literally flip it over, and we're running down, and we're not running, we're walking. And it's putting out a perfect ribbon right on the seam. I can't show you because I don't have it. It's not, it won't work. It won't work like that. No, it won't work. I can't show you, man. I'm sorry. Maybe another day. And so what we ended up doing, and it was great. I mean, I'm telling you, it cut our time in like a 1/10 on a modified roof. The seams are the longest and hardest thing, the longest thing to do, and most tedious thing, right? Doing these seams, right, guys? It stinks. So we did that and had a guy go back behind with a roller, just like that other roller, and just pushed it right in. Nice, and it got that wet with 520, and then they pushed it in, made sure it covered that 4 inches that you needed to get on the seam. It was like night and day in terms of the amount of labor that we saved in time. It was incredible. So, what did she say?
TJ got the code over you.
Code over me?
Yeah. In other words, move so he can start.
Oh yeah, sorry. You can start, man. I'm sorry. I'm holding you up. I'm so sorry. So he's gonna get it started like you saw in that video. Get it nice and primed, and get the roller wet. Get it nice and wet, and then you want to get it to where you got a puddle in front, of course, and then you'll have the back rolling right behind it. Just making sure that everything's nice and level and even and no puddles, because guys, when you're using the 14-inch, it's easy, you don't have a whole lot of issue. But when you're running a 40-inch on a roof like even this, I mean, it's an older roof, it's modified, you got a lot of ups and downs and pockets and things are sagging. It's gonna create a cavity. You're gonna come pull on a 40-inch super spreader, and all of a sudden you're gonna go to a point where nothing's on the roof in this little circle because you hit a pocket. So what you do, you're pulling it, you stop, you go back, you leave a little puddle for your back roller guy, and then you keep going. And your back roller guy comes back, pulls that puddle in, and makes it nice and fills in that gap. These are just things you'll run into as you do it. But profile rollers, we talked about that. The Triton roller is the one that he's using right here. This is the best thing to use for back rolling. Acrylic, silicones, urethanes, I don't care what it is. Using that versus the basic little 9-inch or 12, 18-inch you get from Home Depot, the nap on that is it holds so much product, and it allows you to be able to get a better and even back roll. And then especially when you're using silicones and stuff like that and acrylics, if you're doing it, it holds enough product where if you're in a light spot, you can press it down a little bit and actually push some of that product out of that and fill in and get some of your mill thickness in certain areas on light spots.
Steven?
Yes, sir.
He's about to check the mill gauge.
We're about to check the mill thickness, guys.
I don't know, looking kind of thin.
It's looking thin. It's cold. You got to push really hard, like all the way in. You got to put it in there nice and hard. Right there. Oh, I'm on camera. How does it look? It's a little light? It's a little light. We can go back. They're doing a great job. Everybody cheer them on. All right. Oh, good point. So what we'll do on some of these, especially on urethane, it's a little thicker product than your 412, or 410 rather. 412 is a little thicker of a silicone than the 410 in terms of viscosity, but these are 1/4-inch holes. A lot of guys will take a drill and drill them out a little bit bigger, just so they get better flow. This is a newer, I think, tank or something, so it's probably the basic from this factory 1/4-inch. But you can do that. A lot of times people do that they'll have 2 carts. They'll have one for just urethane, one for silicone. One's got bored out holes, the other one doesn't. So you can do that. These things cost, like that one right there, it's extremely expensive. It's like $4,000 for this thing right here. You got to buy it through me, the only person. And I'll make sure you get it first class. It'll be flown to you. But they're about $400 or so. And like the super spreaders are about almost $600, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just the point when it starts coming up in the middle of the day, we have 10 tanks for each. So we'll get the 40-inch, break for lunch, pop a new one on for the afternoon because it's not going to flow well. What company you work with?
Yeah, you can use multiple tanks. There's little wing nuts on there. You can take the tanks off, put a new tank on, let it sit, and then because he's right. Over time, especially in the summer with the silicone and all that, it's going to gum up.
What company does he work for?
What company does he work for?
Y'all have lunch?
They have lunch.
Roofers?
The roofer's getting a lunch. We're coming to work for you, buddy. Paid lunch, even buy your lunch. But so you can take the tanks off and put a different tank on if you're over the course of the day, because even if you don't take a lunch and you're working all day long, and you know, high humidity, 100 degrees outside. The roof temperature is 180 because it's a black roof like this. You know, the stuff's going to set up, and you know, you'll start to get a little gumming in there. And so either you let it all run out, and you scrape it out, and then get another tank.
Was this material left inside overnight, Eric? So this is probably at 60, 70 degree.
Yeah, this stuff was at least kept in the ambient temperature of the warehouse.
Right, and then, so if this was, what would you do, Stephen, if this was left on a roof and it's 55 degrees out? What would, and you're working that day?
You take a blowtorch and you put it up.
No
blowtorches. All right, so that's not a good idea.
Flamethrower.
Not what you do, but
No, I
what
mean,
everybody
and
else
you
should
don't
do.
want to leave if all possible. You know, this is part of the panel process. We'll talk about, you know, preparation and different things you do when you're going in. The line doesn't have a place for us to put it that's going to stay fairly warm. So we even put tents, you know, like those 10 by 10 pop-up tents. Put the sides on and put a little heater in there to keep things warm. And the warmer this stuff is, the better it's going to apply. You get this stuff super cold, you're going to have problems spreading it. It's just going to be a pain in the butt. You can thin it down a little bit with some xylene or paint thinning xylene. And question, go for it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, a container to keep it warm. Storage container. Yeah, like a Connex box, something like that, a mobile mini, whatever, something along those lines. Yeah, so those are options too. You know, if you have drums, they have the bands that you can put on them, but those bands are kind of expensive, you know, and if you're running a big job and you got 20 drums, you don't want to go buy 20 bands, and that's going to get expensive. And so, yes, sir.
A little one like that, if you got a lot of little tight areas.
Absolutely. We're about to do some Waffle houses and on some PVC membrane and some modified, and that's what we're going to be using is a 14-inch because they're small roofs and there's penetrations, RTUs, just not a whole lot of working space. And I'm still, even if I can use that, I'd rather use that than have my guys dip in a 9-inch roller and roll it out. I just don't trust them to make sure that it's consistent because I've had my guys like, put your mill gauge on it, and they're like, yeah, we checked it, boss. And I go back and I check it, and it's not. And then I throw them off the roof and get a new crew.
Use a little spreader if we got a lot of little.
And what do you mean? Yeah, on a bigger roof like this, we would use a 40-inch spreader. This is just for, you know, obviously a demonstration, but on a Waffle house, you know, something that's a smaller roof, a lot of penetrations, I'm going to use something like this, or maybe a 27-inch spreader, depending on, you know, it's something to gauge. And so on a bigger roof, absolutely, I'm using a 40-inch. I'm getting as much coverage as I can. So, what's your question, sir? Yep. That's one way to do it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's another way to do it too, is squeegee. That's what I started with before I got a 933. Is we would literally pour out. We'd have a notch squeegee, look like teeth, and we'd squeegee it out. And then we'd come back with a 9-inch roller. When I was really cheap, before I got a little money in my pocket, and bought the Triton rollers, and we would knock it down, and it was perfect. I mean, so a notch squeegee, you know, way to do it is if you get to the point where you're like, hey, my pump died, and I don't know how or don't have the means to change out packings, and you're on a roof like this, and you're spraying a roof like this, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd be doing it this way anyways, and you don't have a spreader, you can go get a notch squeegee and rollers and still perform the job. That's how we did a lot of our jobs starting out with silicone, and we had incredible success with getting good, correct mill thicknesses, and that always comes with doing quality checks too, guys. I mean, you guys need to make sure you guys know to quality check consistently, because, you know, they get lazy and they get in a groove and they're moving faster or moving slower. Moving faster is bad because you're thinner, and then you got to go back and put more product down, or they're moving slower and putting too much product, which means you may run short, and obviously that's costly as well. So we try talked about the spreaders, talked about price, talked about profile spreaders, talked about the mini bead spreader in relation to how to do these seams. Any questions on that? Any other questions? Am I missing anything in my notes, my presentations, and have I missed anything? Anybody? Questions?
Want to move on down?
Move on down.
I'm going to do silicone.
Oh, we're going to do silicone too. All right. Silicone. Cost savings. Yes, that's a good point. Because obviously spraying, a lot of people I've talked to, like, oh, I'm a sprayer, I'm, you know, hardcore sprayer. This ain't gonna save me money. And it's like, well, you don't have any less people on the roof. And I'm thinking, okay, well, you have about the same crew. You're not, you know, okay, that's fine. But you have a pump that's got to be maintained. What's mechanical about this? Nothing. Other than letting it sit in there, dry up, peel it out, or get a new tub if you need a new tank anyways, or a new roller. Other than that, there's nothing that's going to break down. A pump can break down. A set of packings is $250, plus you got to install it, and you have to have the equipment to do it, like I said, in a trailer or some facility. Okay, then you got to clean your pump out. We didn't talk about that downstairs. So on doing silicones, for instance, you got to have mineral spirits. A lot of guys like you to use virgin mineral spirits that are not reclaimed, where you don't have any water in it, that could potentially set product that might not have gotten flushed out of your system in your lines or in your pump. If it gets set up in your pump, the good thing is you can break a pump down and scrape all that out. You can just set in your lines, you're done. Throw them things away and go buy some new several $1,000 lines. And if you're running a 933 and spraying silicone, they're the extremes, and they're extremely expensive. So doing it with this, that's where the money savings come. And when you're done, guys, it's literally, you flip it over like you showed you in the video, you empty out what's left, and you leave it on the roof till the next day, let it all dry up, come out there the next morning, swap out your roller, peel out everything that's in the tank, make sure you know, clean out the holes, and you're back to going. The setup, cleanup is all an immense amount of savings, especially on a roof like this. And so it's really easy to debunk that myth that, oh, it is not a saver in terms of cost. And it's also a saver in terms of cost. We got wind today, guys. Would you be spraying today? Probably. I would. I'm a danger guy. Okay, I live on the edge. So, you know, you're gonna spray silicone, God forbid, and it go over here on all these pretty cars, and guess what? You're not just going over there with a towel like you would with acrylic and doing a little simple detail. You're clay barring those cars. Talk about expensive. Ask Mr. Bobby Norrell about having to clean cars and overspray. Yeah, he's not listening because he's a punk. Oh, hey, Joe, what's up, Bobby? GE. Right? How many cars was it? 200 cars he had to detail on GE plan. He had to buy 6 cars. One was a Maybach. Just kidding. Alright. So, I mean, that's another cost savings, guys. You know, you get overspray on something, that's detail work. People are always looking for something for nothing. I had a guy who we had overspray. Luckily, it was acrylic. He was like, "Oh, you're going to repaint my car." I'm like, "Buddy." I mean, it was all oxidized. It was in bad shape. Yeah, we just wiped his car down, and he was happy. We're going to move over here to the silicone. Yeah, it was in bad shape. So this is a pretty little blue roller. I haven't seen one of those in a while. Everybody like the color blue? Anybody like blue? Right. Exciting. Really helps you understand that you got the right amount, because when the blue's gone, you're good.
We're going to ask everybody not to walk through the white to get to the
We're just going to circle it, and then you're going to have to somehow get through it. It's going to be exciting. People are going to have to lay out who's going to be the volunteer. We're drawing straws. Who's going to lay down and be the bridge. So, same thing. In this case, with the silicone, we typically, guys, don't bore out the holes on these purely because it's a little thinner than the urethane, and so it comes out pretty quick on its own. And on a modified roof like this, you got to be careful, because unlike a single ply like EPDM, PVC, you know, the granulation is going to absorb a lot of the product. You're going to go a gallon and a half with 52410 on a system just like this. And I've done it myself, especially if you've been away for a little bit and you start doing it and you do a melt check, you're thinking, man, I'm really thin. But then you do a mill check and you're like, wow, I'm actually 2 gallons a square. And it's because a lot of it gets absorbed into the granules. It's still okay. When you do a mill thickness check, when Rick comes and does his part, he's going to do a little slit test, and he'll be able to see with his optical reader and see what the actual thickness is. So when you're doing this too, especially when you're doing this particular system with the 410 we're doing, you're at a gallon and a half. When you're doing 412, the typical on a basic 12-year system is going to be a gallon per square. And so it's a little thinner, but you got to be careful, because you'll look at this and think, man, I'm thin. But you do your mill thickness and you do your gauge and you check it, and you're actually going to be probably thicker than you think you are. And so sometimes it just takes some time for you getting your eyes to adjust and make sure that you're doing what you're doing. That's why it's so important to consistently do quality checks. Back rolling, the back roller's got it. This guy knows what he's doing, so I don't have to worry about it. Killing it. There he goes. And so we're back rolling with a Triton roller. Those things are $300 a piece, paid through by me. Do not look at theirs. Am I missing anything? Any questions? We talked about anybody want to take over? He's looking fatigued.
Lunch break.
It's time for his lunch break. He works for less. Any questions? We talked about savings, money savings. We talked about the mini bead. We talked about the profile spreaders. Talked about all 3 different types of spreaders, the types of rollers with the spreaders. There are the rollers, by the way, the Triton rollers also. There's another cool roller that if you're doing, it's a weird panel, looks like a little R. It's not standing seam, but it's a funky panel. You don't see much of them. Not trapezoidal. Somebody help me out. It looks like a weird, it comes up and does a little upside down L. Help me out. No. Thinking of something else, but anyways. Single one. No.
I know which one you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking
Anyway, so there, you have to get up underneath that. There's this weird disc-like roll. Looks like a hockey puck. And you get that wet, and you got to go up underneath it. It's a pain in the butt. So don't get those roofs. Just walk away from them. So any questions? Questions. I'm good at questions. I like answering questions. Ask questions. This helps us move a little faster. Anybody got a question? Any question? Not any question, but a question. Yeah, I was going to wait. You got a question. What's your question? This is white, yes. Gray's better? Why would you say gray's better? Like this gray or gray like Battleship gray? The gray option, yeah. I've done for dirt. Yes, okay. Right. Yeah. I'm not sure what the SRI is on gray. We could probably look that up. But yeah, I mean, obviously silicone is, it has more of a hydrostatic, with its chemistry, it's, at the end when it's done, it's got a hydrostatic tendency, so it's going to attract more dirt, unlike an acrylic system. And so in the first 6 months, it's going to get a little kind of dirty, no matter what you do. Now there is, you could go and pressure wash it after like maybe the first year, and then after that, that hydrostatic sort of gone away, you pressure wash it, and then you'll probably have a lot longer life of having a more white roof. We did a college over in Marion, Alabama, where we did Battleship Gray, because it was on a standing, old school standing seam metal roof that I'd never seen before. But it was exposed, you could see it, so we did Battleship Gray, and it looked really, really good. So there is a lot of options with colors. You know, the Sherwin-Williams paint swatches, if I'm right, Brian, you'd use a Sherwin-Williams paint swatch to get your colors, Brian? Okay. And so that's how you'd match it. You'd send that to Brian, or to the team, not Brian, and then let them send that off. They'll get you samples you can bring back and test out to make sure that's the color that you want, because looking at it on paper, just like you're painting your house, you want to do a little test to make sure that's what the client's wanting, because it does cost more and it's a special batch and it's non-returnable if you don't like the color. Ask Bobby Norrell. I'm just kidding, I don't know. So any other questions? Bueller? Yeah, we've got another one. What we got? Question, answer. In the woods, the bear does in the woods. What? What's that? Leaves are blowing everywhere. Painted the roof. We're not painting, we're coating. We're restoring, sir. Yep. Yep. Leaves are everywhere. We leave them on there. It's an aesthetic appeal. We're not stepping in new product. We're letting that stuff dry, and then we're going over and we're kind of like kick the leaf off. If it didn't get deep into the product, you're probably fine. All right? Or you could go back, kick the leaf off, do a little quick little boop, boop on top of it, little boop, boop, and then you're good. All right? Sounds good? You like that idea? Cool. I just leave the leaves. Do you like the sound effects? So. Mandy's telling me to shut up.
I would just like to add the coverage rate for leaves is 50 pounds per square.
I think we're pretty much close to done. We're about to box ourselves in. And turn it over to Miss Lisa. Burpee.
All right, if everybody would like to come over to the edge here, close to the, we have a little roof that's do not get too close to the edge of the roof, please don't fall. If it's dull like that, everything will stick to it in every pool test we've done. If it's shiny and new and we left this open and exposed deliberately, the only thing that we have found that will actually pass the pool test is silicone. So basically what we did is we did the last with the 522, and we did 2 plies of silicone on the front part because we had just replaced that whole corner of the roof. We had some deteriorated decking. So basically, if you come into the raw flashing or the Dynaclad or whatever, shiny full back, video pull test number 1. But number 2 is if you know it's shiny like that and your urethane fails, try silicone and it will work because we did pull test on this roof prior to coating.
So you just doubled up with the silicone on the bare?
That's correct. We did 2 coats of silicone in lieu of doing the 520. Yes, on the wall flashing. Yes. And this is basically the 3 phases.
So there isn't any 520 on the parapet at all. It's just
There's no 520 on that new raw flashing there where we had the new raw flashing. We will do 520, as you can see in the center section, because it will adhere to that and it passed the pull test.
Thank you for everything, Lisa and TJ. Thank you, all of it, everybody from Thomas Roofing. All right, bus should still be downstairs. I think so. So it's gonna take everybody back to the hotel. You got a few minutes to chill, and then be in the lobby at 6, and Kimberly will be there to walk you over.